In today's episode, I'm checking out Tenfold's Identity, Governance and Access platform for Active Directory. The Community Edition is free, but don't worry, if you've got Entra ID or SAP, we've got you covered as well. Check it out. Hi everyone, Andy here. So nice to see you and a warm welcome to the channel. On today's episode, I'm checking out Tenfold, the identity, access, governance and permissions solution that sits directly on top of Active Directory. And the most important thing is the Community Edition is absolutely free. But don't worry if you've got things like Entra ID or a hybrid solution or SAP or another platform. Guarantee there's a solution for you, and I'm going to put the links below. And of course, if you want to download this free edition, please go ahead and do so, and you can also book a demo with Tenfold themselves. Now, just a quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we'd love to have you on board. You know what to do. Click on the subscribe button up there, ring that notification bell, and you'll be notified of any new videos. And if you've got questions, comments, we love those. So get those down below, and I'll always do my best for you. So I think without any further jibber jabber, I think it's about time we check out the Tenfold Community Edition, and just let me show you how powerful this is. This is so cool. Check it out. Okay, let's take a look then at Tenfold. So I'm kicking off on the Tenfold website just to mention that the version I'm showing you today, this is an absolutely free version. So this is their Community Edition. And unlike many Community Editions, which allow you just to have like a few users, this will give you full access up to 150 users. So it's completely unlimited. So this will work with either Entra ID, Active Directory, and so on. So the demo, the environment that I've got here is a Windows Server 2019, and I'm using, this is a domain controller, and you can see I've got Active Directory on here. Now, I've been working with Windows for many, many years, and one of the problems with Active Directory, it was of course written for a different era, for the noughties, and we have all of these different admin portals. I always felt that it was a little clunky, and certainly when it comes to things like identity governance, administration, it always was a little bit tricky. And of course, now we're in a very kind of dangerous time with the likes of, you know, criminals, cyber criminals, and so on. So this is where Tenfold's identity governance and administration platform comes in. And as you can see, it's so easy to navigate. It just has these series of different tiles, and it allows you to not just govern and administer users, but also their resources. So ensuring that the right users have access to the right resources and so on. And one real benefit of Tenfold is its integration capabilities with the likes of HR systems. So it can seamlessly integrate with it. So onboarding and offboarding of employees in terms of compliance and governance perspective is going to be so much easier. Now, in addition, of course, chances are we're working on multiple platforms, the likes of Entra ID, Identity Governance, Microsoft 365, Active Directory. So it's great to be able to integrate them into a single platform. And as you can see here, I can simply go into the settings if you want to change the customization of anything. Change the look, the feel, maybe you want the menu bar down vertical or horizontal. Everything is easily customizable. So one of the first features I want to show you is employee lifecycle management. So we need to create a new employee, and this can either be an employee internally or it can be an external user. So I'm going to choose an employee, and I'm a Trekkie, of course, so I'm going to type in Jean-Luc Picard, and I'm just going to check to see if this user doesn't exist. He doesn't. So I'm going to go ahead and click next, and I can put in the job title for the user here. So he's going to be a salesperson or a sales manager. I'm going to pop him in the department of sales, of course. And what this is doing is adding him to an organizational unit, potentially a group membership, and so on. I can also say, is this employee a full-time employee, or is he just a temporary? Is he a contractor or something like that? And I can even choose a location, and you can do this irrelevant of the system that you're working with. So if it's Entra, in this case, it's Active Directory, it's all pretty much the same. Of course, I can then go ahead and complete the other fields as well. If you want a logon script, is it going to be a staff number, and so on. So I'm just going to accept that. And you can see it's putting in the organization sales, going to put him in Toronto. And you can see as a consequence of that, it's assigned him the appropriate applications that this user in this location is going to need. And in addition, by the way, I can also request more resources for the user. So does he need a particular piece of equipment, internet access, and so on. So I'm happy with that. I'm just clicking on save, and that'll now process everything through into Active Directory, and we can then continue from there. So here in Active Directory users and computers, you can see I've got my organizational unit Tenfold. And sure enough, if I go into my users and into Toronto, you can see that Tenfold has correctly placed Jean-Luc Picard in that organizational unit. It's assigned him an email address accordingly. If there was any kind of temporary issues on his account, he would have that. You can also see he's got a home directory, and if I would have chosen a profile, it would have sent that up. And as you can see, it's also assigned him group memberships. So in terms of lifecycle management, this is just absolutely awesome. Okay, so back here in the information card, I can now click onto the user's resources, and any resources that has been assigned to the user, via the group membership or via the organizational unit, you can see that they're in here. Now, you can assign users resources, or they can request access to resources as well. And this can include, of course, documents. Any requests that the user would have would come here. And again, you can see the request status if it's been accepted or rejected. You can also go into the life cycle. So this gives you an overview of the life cycle. And you can see at the moment it's active. You can lock that life cycle, which potentially means it doesn't go any further. Or you can, of course, delete it as well. So thinking about lifecycle management, creating the users and user profiles and everything that goes along with that is absolutely fantastic. So one of the downsides of traditional Active Directory is if a user's role changes or they're a member of a different group, permissions can potentially accumulate. This is so much easier because it's automated. So I'm searching for Captain Picard once again, and I'm going to go in, I'm going to edit his account. At the moment, Captain Picard is a member of the sales team. Now, what happens if he gets promoted or changes jobs? So in this case, I'm going to make him a member of the finance team. So what will happen to his account? Of course, we'll change his job title. We can do that. So instead of being a sales manager, he can now be a finance manager. What makes lifecycle governance and management so simple here is just by one single change here in the portal, we can simply save this. As before, this now waterfalls right through Microsoft 365 or Active Directory or SAP or whatever system you're using. And if I now come into Active Directory users and computers once more, and if I come down to the users and in the Tenfold, of course, he's in Toronto, and here's Jean-Luc. So just open up Jean-Luc's account, and any properties that were in the sales team have now changed. So now you can see that everything has moved into the finance division. So no more accumulating privileges, no more real bloopers to be made that traditionally could have been a potential nightmare in the past. So one of the important factors in modern identity governance is the ability to ensure that the right users have the right resources at the right time. So you can come into the admin portal here and you can request resources for both yourself, but also for others as well. Users can also do this as well. So for me, I'm just going to click on Change User, and I'm going to come down into Captain Picard's account here. So I'm now looking at, this is the user portal. So when the user signs in and goes to Tenfold, they can view their resources and request them. They can view their data. They can edit their security settings, and any requests that they've acquired, they can see there. And this can include both software, hardware, resources, networking, access to files and folders, and so on. So in this case, I'm going to go into software, and I need some software for my job. So what do I need? I want a Office package, for example. So you might want access to the, let's say, Microsoft Word. And you can see here it's requesting, why do you need access? So you can put in there for a particular project or what have you. Likewise, you can request a piece of hardware, whether it's a new PC or a new mobile device. And again, this can then be approved by the appropriate department. You can request a device or a piece of software, and you can even specify how long you need it for. So in this case, I'm not going to put an expiry date on this. So you can see here, I just simply save my requests, and you can see that this goes into like a little shopping basket. And you can see anytime I can just come in and I can view the requests. I can see if they've been approved or if they've been pending. You'll notice one has already been approved. So in many cases, it's automated, okay? However, of course, with identity governance and lifecycle management, sometimes they need to be appropriately approved, but for example, by a manager. So I can come in back into the admin portal, and I can come into all the requests here. And you can see, I can see a list of all the requests of the various users. And you can see that this is, at the moment, it's unapproved. I might not be the appropriate manager who gives that approval. But the fact is that we have this life cycle in place here that can then kick in, and we can then request approval for this user. And this can then be updated. And as I said, this can either be a manual or, in most cases, an automated process. Now, if you're familiar with Entra ID, you'll be familiar with RBAC, or role-based access control. And in Tenfold, we call these profiles. So one of the great things about this is that you can come into profiles and you can assign them to certain groups of users and so on. So we have these profiles here, and you can see that they can match a department or a location. For example, if you want to automatically assign an entire location with a certain piece of equipment or a certain piece of software, just think how much time that could save when it comes to administration. So I added in Captain Picard into the finance team earlier. So now if I go into the finance team, you can see it's given me all the rules regarding this team. So for example, is it an internal team? Is it an external team? I can even set up things like self-service, so users can go in and automatically become a member of this team. Things like, do I want to set schedule dates for content to be available to a particular user? So it takes advantage of things like attribute-based authentication. Even the resources, you can see I can assign the resources to certain groups of users. So things like Active Directory groups. For example, I've made finance a member of this profile. Things like I've just gone ahead and assigned software to this profile. How cool is that? And how much time would this save if you're just using regular Active Directory or something like that? So this is such a powerful feature. And of course, once you've set that up, other things you can set up those workflows, whether they're manual, automated. You can set up who are the owners of the data, for example, so that the owners can grant permission. So I love profiles. Again, the fact that you can assign these to both groups of users, but also locations as well. See, identity governance is super important, especially when it comes to onboarding, offboarding, and even moving employees within the company. So we talked about profiles, for example, and how you can configure profiles. We have an example of the resources that the user might have in the sales team as opposed to the finance team, for example. So in this next section, we're going to talk about in-depth permissions reporting, making sure that our users have access to the right resources, and most importantly for compliance purposes, have the right permissions. Check it out. So in order to take a look at in-depth reporting, we're going to come up here into the privileges page, and I'm going to scroll into Active Directory. Again, it could be Entra ID if you're using that. And in this case, we have some file servers, and I want to know who's been using or accessing the file servers. So I can come down here and just expand these objects, and they're extremely granular, as you can see. So you can delve right into those individual folders. So I've got a folder here called invoices. You can see here it shows me if this folder has got a data owner involved, how many items are in there, how many, what the size is of the folder as well. We can also come up to the directory and you can see that you've got the permissions. You can change the permissions here as well. You can change the data owners, the settings, and so on. So it's really super flexible here. I also want to kind of drill down into these permissions as well. So you can see here, I might want to drill into, let's say, who's got full control, who's got modify plus, for example, the organization finance. And sure enough, here's my user, Jean-Luc Picard. Now I can see all the various permissions that Jean-Luc has got. So read, list, execute, and so on. So that, just having that is really super useful. I can also see how many users have access to this particular resource at this time. So I've got 14. I can go up to the properties and go into this in a little bit more detail. I can show explicit permissions, who's got explicit permissions, and so on. The other thing that we've also got is the ability to come in and say, okay, what about who are the owners? So have we got things like data owners view? So if you were a data owner here, your view might be slightly different to an admin, for example. You can also, again, just drill down. If I go drill down into finance, just an example, you can also go in and view things like historical data. So for example, here, if I just come in, I've got a user here, let's call him, let's call Captain Kirk here. You can see that Captain Kirk is a member of the sales group, or the finance group rather, I should say. We've also got things like you can come up and you can view the historical data. So I can go back and see if there's been any changes to this directory, and indeed who's made those changes. And you can either do that on a folder by folder basis, or alternatively, you can do it on a user by user basis. So I can even come in and say, you know, I've got a folder here and I've got a particular user on this folder. So for example, here you can see that I've got a user, he's a member of the finance group. I want to, let's say, request history on this particular user. So who granted him permissions to this folder? Was it a particular administrator? When was it done? When was the change made? And this is fantastic auditing purposes. And just a quick reminder, if you are looking to do some Microsoft 365 reporting and you've got this connected to the likes of 365 and Entra ID, then you're really going to get some super detailed reporting. I mean, these are things that Microsoft 365 doesn't have. So not only can you monitor your internal employees, but you'll also be able to monitor, for example, shares that you're sharing with, for example, external users. Just think of the benefits of that. And it's all inclusive if you're using less than 150 users, which is awesome. And lastly, I just want to show you this one. This is the dashboard from a reporting standpoint that Entra ID and Active Directory just doesn't have. Just think how much time this would save you. I've got one neglected account, 46 accounts that have never even been used, accounts without any kind of password change. And again, you can drill in to all of these features. Just think of the benefits of that and how much time and trouble it would save you. Now, one of the cool features that Microsoft 365 has and Active Directory does not have is the ability to do access reviews. Access reviews are so important because they allow you just to say, hey, look, does this particular user still need access to these resources? Or does this user still need access to this particular application? And this is typically an additional feature that you'll need to pay for in the likes of Microsoft 365. But in Tenfold, you can deploy this feature in not only Entra ID and SAP, but also Active Directory as well. Let's take a look. So in the case of access reviews, you can find them here in the governance menu, and we call them recertification in Tenfold. Now you can see the first thing you want to do is create a policy. Now in this example, I've already created 4 policies, one of which of course is file servers, but you can go and create your own if you want to. So with the file server policy, I'm going to choose to edit it and just show you how I configured it. You can choose whether you want it to be a manual start or whether you want it to be an automatic process. And you can choose how often you want the process to run, weekly, monthly, yearly, and so on. How often do you want it to be monitored? In this case, I've set it up for every 30 days. And as you can see, I'm editing things like if there's any changes in permissions or users leave or they don't need a resource access anymore. You can access the file server rule, and in this case I'm monitoring the classifiers of data owners. So I want to know if there's any changes with data owners, but again you can choose an individual privilege change or something like that if you want. You can set limitations. You can determine whether it's internal or external objects that you're monitoring. You can change the layout. You can choose whether you want to delete the user from the resource if the user is no longer valid access, how often to implement it, do they need approval, and so on. Again, if you don't like the policy, you can delete it or you can edit it at any time. So you really have a lot of control. So the other thing that you might want to do, of course, is once you've set that up, obviously you can deactivate it anytime. But in this case, we actually want to start the policy manually in this case. So I'm going to say, yeah, I now want to start monitoring those file servers. And as you can see, again, you can deactivate, you can stop it anytime. And in this case, I'm just going into a quick preview to see exactly what I am monitoring. So in this case, I've got 3 assignments to this particular object. The nice thing is you can also export this as well. So if you've got a CSV file or some other kind of internal system, you can export that quite easily. To get a nice overview, as you can see, you can come in and, for example, I can choose the file servers here. And you can see, for example, on some folders that I've got some pending reviews here. And again, I can just click in and I can just view those. And you can see I've got users here that have got certain sets of permissions. And I can choose whether I want to keep those or indeed change them. So there you have it, Tenfold's Community Edition for Active Directory. Isn't that super cool? Remember, absolutely free, no catch. If you've got less than 150 users, download it now. I'll put the links below and you can start trying it. And also just a quick reminder that if you have got Entra ID in a hybrid solution, SAP or some other kind of platform, don't worry, there is a version for you there as well. Links all there down below. Listen, I really appreciate you joining me this week. If you've enjoyed the video, give me a big like. It really does help the channel. And if you've not subscribed, bump the subscribe button, come on board and join me. I'd like to just say a huge thank you. We've reached 200,000 subscribers. Woohoo! I can't tell you how much I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. That's it for today. Thanks very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Take care.